よろしいでしょうか。すみません。Live stream has started. Okay, so I think we can start. Yeah, I guess for whoever is watching, thank you very much for watching. So this is a session on AI in urban regulation, zoning, planning, and permitting. And my name is Yasushi Ishida from University of Hawaii. I will be moderating the session. We have a great panelist, great collection of panelists today. So I'll just go from the order that I see on my screen. So from the left, so Yasushi Sakai from MIT, City Science Lab, I think. And Neha Gaonkar, co-founder of CivCheck. Then Casey Rehm from SciArc and Studio MMR. Thank you very much. I'll start sharing the screen. Can you guys see the screen? Okay, great. Yeah, so this is the roundtable session titled AI in Urban Regulation. So we'll first go over what we do first, and then we'll go into the discussion. So first, so this is who I am. I guess I want to touch a little bit on what motivated this topic. So it's sort of a follow-up to the conversation that we had in the previous session that I moderated 2 years ago, March of 2024. At the time, we discussed on the topic about AI in architecture beyond imagery. We casually sort of touched on, I think Casey touched on the work that one of his students were doing at the time. The student was training a language model on international building code, and in the near future, we might be using AI to assist with building code. But I guess at the time, the idea sounded, at least to me, the idea sounded very cutting edge to me. And also, I think we kind of discussed that but given the liability and things like that, it's probably not going to be for a while that it's going to be put into practice. But now, just the other day, I saw this ad on UPCO's Copilot Project Aware AI. So it's very much in use. So it just feels like everything is sort of like progressing at much more speed than we anticipate. Just like the last time, even though I moderated a session on AI in imagery, I barely used AI with imagery. This time, I feel like I have just a tip of my foot in this realm. I currently work on sort of like the zoning reimagining project with a state agency about a neighborhood in Honolulu. Most of my scope is using physical model for engagement, but maybe I thought some sort of AI sort of video tools might be useful for doing engagement, sort of like getting public's input and sort of helping them imagine what that might look like. By the time at the time that I was thinking about that was last summer, where these tools are becoming rapidly available for almost layman people. 2 years ago in 2024, doing AI video seemed very advanced, but now even my students do that without any instruction. So again, the time is changing a lot, but I'm happy to have other speakers who's much deeper into this area of study. So I'm gonna pass it to Neha.
Thank you so much, Yasushi. So my name is Neha Gaonkar. I'm an architect out of Chicago, and primarily spent the past 10 years of my career working on the more technical side. So building code consulting was kind of my primary role. Worked with kind of hundreds of architecture firms and engineering firms across the US and Canada in making sure that their designs and the kind of projects met compliance with all the kind of laws and regulations that apply for their specific site and their specific project. And this wasn't something that I was necessarily taught in great lengths during my schooling. So I went to a 5-year kind of BArch school, and codes were maybe talked about in a semester max. So really during a career fair is when I really even understood that this played such a critical and crucial part in the landscape of building and design and construction. So I happened to stumble across it very kind of early on in my career. And I grew a love for it. So I really enjoyed the kind of intersection of design, but also the constraints that come along with building something that is safe and takes into consideration the location and the kind of general context of the landscape. And I didn't quite know what I was getting into, but learned a lot along the way. And a lot of my job felt repetitive in certain senses. There were a lot of tasks that I was doing time and time again. But in reality, everything is anything but black and white. Everything is a gray area. It's intentionally left ambiguous so you can kind of be creative within the constraints of the code. And I really felt like some of the kind of more mundane tasks lent themselves to automation and to a computer doing that job so that I could make decisions that were more creative and really kind of push the boundaries of what I was able to design in. And I grew a fascination with that kind of topic specifically. So after I kind of took my exams and kind of practiced for a little while, I decided to take the leap and go down the more technology side of architecture and essentially built tools to help me in my day-to-day tasks. So really looked at the kind of bottlenecks that we face as an industry, and at the core of it, the kind of municipal approval process plays a big part in the overall schedule when it comes to building construction. So I really kind of went to tackle that specific problem. And I coupled up with my co-founder, Deekshita, who comes out of MIT, and kind of is really deep into the ethical AI space. So designing purpose-built technology that actually fixes problems in a way that's ethical and equitable for everyone using it. So kind of both of our experiences together is what led us down this path. And I learned so much during my career previously when it came to plan review and inspections that I basically kind of used that as a kicking off point to build tools with the kind of AI and emerging technology that's available today. So learned a lot. And honestly, AI was a pretty novel concept for me even a couple of years ago, but everything is moving at such a fast pace that I think the industry and students kind of entering both schooling and the workforce need to build fluency to make sure that we understand what the capabilities and limitations of these tools are, especially at the pace at which things are moving right now. So that's really what I'm advocating and excited to talk more in detail today.
Great. Do you mind touching a little bit on what your the tools that you're developing currently and the kind of work that you do?
Yeah, so fundamentally, what CivCheck is doing is bridging the kind of communication gap that exists between municipalities that are reviewing and approving your permit. So anything that you're constructing needs a series of permits before you even can start construction. But understanding the kind of complex and nuanced workflows when it comes to permitting, understanding what the municipal government is looking for, as well as kind of layering on all the complex codes, standards, ordinances that apply to your specific project require a lot of context and a lot of research. So kind of staying afloat with what a specific city requires. Every municipality has very specific requirements, and people pay a lot of money for consultants like me to kind of help them through the process. But the average homeowner has no tools available to help them understand how to build and how to design in the space that they own. So really making sure that it doesn't feel like such a black box when you're submitting to a city, and making sure that everything is transparent in terms of what applies to your project so that your time is not spent doing tons and tons of research only for that research to be obsolete because their rules have changed. We basically bridge the gap. We work directly with cities and we take into consideration their codes, standards, requirements, permitting kind of rules and regulations, and then we package it in a way that educates the applicants, which are primarily architects, engineers, contractors. So we're basically kind of fixing this hyper niche problem. And the kind of crux of why permitting takes so long is twofold. On the applicant side, it's just the complexity of the environment makes it really difficult to stay afloat with. And the application of the code is not black and white. So every municipality may interpret codes in their own ways. And you're currently learning about how to design in a specific municipality through a series of corrections. So you go back and forth with the city until you kind of build something or design something that is approvable. So we basically fix the problem by educating the applicants upfront. And then in the city side, plan review is inherently so human. So we basically help standardize and make consistent the reviews that they're doing. So you feel like you're predicting what you're about to get reviewed on, because otherwise the types of regulations and the types of corrections, you can get very different responses based on who's reviewing.
Thank you. I would like to pass it to Yasushi Sakai.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yasushi Sakai. I'm from the MIT Media Lab. Media Lab has maybe 20-something of these research groups. I'm a research staff at the City Science group. And we do different things, but the first video is kind of an exhibit that we did a few years ago in New York's Cooper Hewitt. It was about what if we had autonomous vehicles, but one is shared, lightweight mobility, but still autonomous. What about the other one? The red world, so to say, is private owned, but still autonomous. Our simulation shows that it's a very different landscape. So that was more like a kind of educational tool. So this platform is what we call Cityscope. And this is primarily, it's all fancy and kind of glitters, but it's the main purpose here is for community engagement and informed decisions. So this was, I think I would say, pre-AI. In the middle, the video, if you can start. Yeah. So this is what we are developing for San Francisco. It's not technically, we don't have a tangible interface, so I don't know if this is technically a Cityscope that we are used to, but we have two displays, basically two TVs. The bottom one shows more like a analytical, a typical urban planning kind of analysis. But this is last year. What we did is interpret the data in more image generation, or in this case, videos, so that we can, when we actually go to San Francisco and do community engagement, we can kind of go back and forth about, hey, this is an analysis that we did. This is an interpretation based on that analysis, so people can have more kind of a better idea on what they would actually see. So this whole premise of San Francisco is that they had to upzone 36,000 housing units. It's kind of I think, a big deal. But again, we try to help the planning department to open these community engagement meetings and then try to explain how it would look like. So this was our first attempt on using these image generational tools. And I think so we ended up not just us generating videos, but on the fly, kind of a layback kind of a workshop that, it looks like we do have upzoning, but it won't change the world. It won't change the neighborhood in one night. So that was one of the emphasis. And we all use kind of all kinds of different simulations of what the probability of development is. And for example, the third one is kind of in response to Boston and San Francisco taking so much days and potentially years on permitting. So Boston is going through this whole renovation of the Article 80 is what they're reviewing and approval process. We work together with the city and kind of assess the how they would like to change the permitting system. And it kind of spawned after that. But we on the bottom video, you see that we kind of have this new way of zoning. We're proposing a new way of zoning called dynamic zoning. In a nutshell, it asks what the neighborhood wants. And then based on that preference order, we give kind of a trade-off situation for both of the developers, meaning that if the developer chooses to incorporate some of these based on these preference order, they would get additional floor. So that means more floor, more profit, but they need to give back. So this was basically kind of a more systematic approach on incentive zoning, like we all know. But in this, the use of AI in this case is we basically build a economic performer behind the hood, and the developer, which is the LLM, actually decides which combination they would get. They will incorporate the public benefits so that they kind of maximize their profit. And after that, we kind of have another voting, or maybe it's just a simple survey, and kind of go kick back to the residents and say, well, the developer says they are willing to incorporate these good things like parks and grocery stores, but they will build a 18-story building. The likelihood of development, because it pencils out, it has like 86 or something like that. So I tried to have like a transition of how we use AI. So no AI, image generation, videos, and then we have LLM stakeholders, so we can have like more interactive tools.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very kind of interesting progression over time. I guess we'll now pass to Casey.
Thank you, Sushi. Yeah, as Yasushi mentioned, I participated in a panel in 2024 and then a follow-up lecture. And I was kind of joking with Yasushi that the work I was doing at that point in the office was maybe more closely aligned to this topic. I believe in the last lecture, I talked a bit about a consulting project we were doing for a master planning firm called Agency Artifact, which has been proposing a kind of radical project to create a pedestrian-friendly corridor between LAX all the way up through downtown to Pasadena. And we had been using artificial intelligence and a pretty extensive stack to identify suitable sites for rezoning to create this opportunities for both like housing and tenant-owned investment opportunities within these neighborhoods. And then I think at that time also we were doing a simulation project for a nonprofit in Sacramento that was exploring how changes to the property tax code could potentially impact revenue and incentivize housing construction here in Los Angeles. You know, at that time, as Yasushi mentioned, we were in an era where in order to get the AI models to respond effectively to those types of data sets, we were doing a lot of fine tuning on LLM models. And it's been interesting to see how that's transitioned to the way we're currently working with them, where the kind of paradigm has shifted from fine tuning to working with things like RAG agents and their successors as a way of using like retrieval and working with foundational models on top of massive data stacks. So I just want to kind of lay out here on my slide. On the left is a kind of diagram of the way that we're currently operating, both in the office and in the studio. This is like a fairly kind of representative stack what we're creating, where it's really a platform of like multiple integrated agents, including basically hovering around a primary data repository where we're scraping from the internet, drawing in from user supplied references, so everything from like client briefs material standards, program information, building codes are certainly in there, zoning codes. And that's being displaced to a kind of network of sub-agents that are then enacting like specific tasks that have been kind of targeted towards everything from generating robotic toolpaths to assist in automated fabrication to, LLM agents doing our 3D modeling that have like an awareness of tectonic systems and structural performance, passing into like plan generation and BIM generation for producing our data sets, and like always bringing this information back into the central repository so that at the end of the day, it can be transitioned out into, either like, client-facing decks, drawing sets for submission, or, our office does everything from consulting to media art projects. So sometimes the result of these platforms might be, a media art installation that, we're working on one of those right now for Gen AI startup. And then like within our office, I would say like we have a tendency to not really, well, me specifically, not really emphasize enough in UI development as a way of engaging with this. I tend to just kind of work on terminal with like nasty markdown documents and stuff. But as an effort to try to make this stuff more accessible, both to clients when we're doing consulting projects, and then also in my work at the school at SciArc in the MS Architectural Intelligence program. UI has become a critical component of our curriculum and our emphasis. So this middle is an example of a platform that Haiming Wang made last year, a student of mine, and the type of UI that we're developing. And this is basically a chat interactive, with some like 3D interaction tool that he built, which kind of at that time was using RAG agents to bring in both like building codes and zoning codes, as well as parsing, 250-page narrative client briefs to start to auto-generate different massing diagrams that both like fit the constraints of the site and the building code, as well as allowed the architect to begin to shape massing strategies and test their performance against different criteria, from like environmental impact to circulation, access, all these issues. And then just on the right, like I said, right now, we're not really working on so many urban projects. We're working on a text to 3D printed furniture pipeline, working with a sustainable corn-based materials. So it's that same stack I'm showing on the left, but like the criterion here is like the FEA analysis on corn polymers. And then the project on the right is a concept design that we've done using a current platform that we're continuing forward, hopefully the next couple months, for a CLT mass timber based construction system for multi-unit housing. Although this specific project was a proposal for a humanoid robotics R&D center plus headquarters. Does that sound good?
Sound good.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a super wide range of work. But I guess I guess everyone's work kind of has some area that overlaps. So I guess we can kind of have a casual conversation, but I guess I'll start with kind of a trigger question, and I guess the conversation probably organically evolves from there. I think maybe Neha's point about how building code is or the building codes and zoning codes, that can be kind of messy, and there's like a fuzzy area, nothing is black and white. That to me sort of speaks to the human nature. So I guess that we can call it as a human messiness. And then AI, correct me if I'm wrong, the computer can be about efficiency, so maybe AI is about hyper efficiency. So I guess maybe we'll start. I mean, like anyone can start, but I guess under this sort of like umbrella, the loose questions I have is like, where has AI been effective in your work? And in that, is there any sort of like unexpected challenges? And then how do we deal with human realities, which is more like ambiguity, inconsistency, irrationality? So I don't mean to put anyone in a position, but I guess I would like to start with Neha because you kind of mentioned that aspect in your work. So maybe, yeah, anything that relates to this topic.
Yeah, sure. So I think rather than talking about how AI has been effective in my work, maybe I can kind of position it for the users of our platform. So a lot of the kind of early discovery work we were doing when it came to the formation of CivCheck, I came in with a lot of assumptions into the space because I worked on the commercial side of architecture. So new construction buildings, where they have a lot of money, they have a lot of time and resources that they put towards making sure that the building is constructible, that it kind of meets the intent of the codes and standards. If they're introducing new material technologies and science, they really get ahead of it by engaging with a municipality very early on during concept design. So what we found is there is a process in place that certain projects go through in order to make sure that whatever they're designing to meets the intent. So as they get to the permitting process, it, in theory, should be pretty smooth in terms of predicting what that path to approval looks like. Now, in reality, it's everything but. That human messiness is very inherent in the process itself. So there are multiple points at which a project could fail. It could be that because of human bias, you're kind of remembering what you were able to do in the past in a certain municipality or a certain site or context or project, and you use those learnings to then inform what you're doing in the future. In reality, codes are changing all the time, processes changing all the time, and to keep afloat with all of that research takes a lot of time and energy. And sometimes you only learn once you actually start engaging with the municipality. So when we talk about kind of applicants who are architects, engineers, there is so much coordination that is already going on that the code research aspect sometimes is left until very late in the game. So where AI can be effective is keeping up with those rules and regulations, being able to summarize books that are this thick and you have 10 of them that potentially apply to your project, being able to distill and filter what applies, quickly going through things that are thousands of pages long and really assessing how it aligns with your process and the project takes a lot of manual effort. So to Casey's point, when it comes to RAGs, there's a real need and purpose in having this kind of central database that you can pull from and then associate with what your problem is at the time that you're trying to solve it. So I think that's where AI is effective, where it's at the end of the day, a really, really powerful tool, but you need to then combine that with human judgment in order to make a decision. So using all of the information that you're able to filter and the thresholds that you're able to push and pull, there needs to be someone at the end of the day that then consumes that information and can make a judgment call at the end of the day. So that's both for applicants as well as plan reviewers. So displaying everything that applies. So instead of things that take minutes and hours to research, you can then make decisions within seconds. So that's where we've seen it be really effective. Now, unexpected challenges, we run the gamut when it comes to some people are very scared of AI, understandably, where it's like, this is going to take over my job because it's essentially doing all of the work that I'm doing. And then on the other side, you have people that really don't trust it because it takes so many years of experience to even be able to do something like plan review in the way that lends itself to interpreting the codes in the way that you're supposed to, applying it in the context of an existing building. So we kind of run the gamut when it comes to users actually interacting with new technologies. And that's where the ethical AI component really plays a part, where you need to make sure that everything is explained. It's clear how the judgment is being made. And at the end of the day, the design professional or the city official has final say. So they have the final judgment call. So that's where we kind of see in an emerging market where there's so much technology that's coming up day in and day out, how explainable are the sources is really important so that you can kind of understand how a decision was made so that you can then use that to make a final ultimate decision on how you want to use that information. So I think that's where the fuzziness sometimes is, and you need tooling to be a tool that is clear enough where the end user understands what's going on.
Any response to that, Casey or Yasushi-san? Or maybe I can start. So I guess I think what you were kind of describing in the beginning on the commercial sector, how the private company is already working with the municipality to make sure that, you know, they're sort of like working along the, I mean, which kind of sounds like a lack of better term to me, it sounds like a pre-construction, you know, the contractor works with architect to do a sort of pre-construction service. So it's totally understandable that, you know, the large project must go through something like that, you know, the pre-check with the municipality even before they approach the permit portion. And then I'm kind of like looking back to the days that I used to work at bigger firms. I feel like any firm of certain scale, you know, this is kind of more on the messy human side. I feel like they always have this one person who's like best friends with the fire marshal at the city, for example. You know, maybe I'm caricaturizing a little bit. Which sounds like, you know, maybe not a very clean way, but that, like, to me, like the more experience you have in the working world, that like you kind of understand how necessary that kind of thing is. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm trying to get to any specific point. So that's sort of like the messier side. So I guess maybe to bring back to your thing, I think I kind of remember the slide deck. One of the slide that you had before is you know, you mentioned homeowners who has never done permitting before, and he doesn't know what the site plan is. And, you know, I think it was also kind of a caricature of this person holding a painting, and is this a site plan? And then the other side, there are a group of people who very well knows what it is. And so it sounds like what AI can be super useful is, you know, these sort of like bad applications or something that doesn't conform to the format that was meant to be, and you're probably wasting a lot of human resource just kind of like checking these boxes and things like that, right? So so I guess that there's that aspect. I feel like I'm just kind of like mumbling, but I was hoping you guys
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I guess I have human realities here, but I think there is another layer to this, which is city realities, and cities often contradict to each other too. So, I mean, I think that's we were discussing before this, but I think that's actually the beauty to study like urban planning and architecture in this country, that it's so different that, for example, cities like Boston and San Francisco, very discretionary, lots of talking, very, in that sense, slow. And then you have, this is really textbook knowledge, but like places like Houston, or maybe very code oriented, New York, I guess LA is also. So that kind of ambiguity in a sense, or inconsistency, is, I think you should, as a whole, it needs to deal with it. And if you're making these kind of tools, you need to kind of look for what's the rationale or justification to build these tools that it doesn't really fit. It's not like a one size fits all situation. And if you kind of know that, that's actually kind of very, I would say it's you're starting to be competitive in the world market also, because obviously these codes are different. So that's why, like, in some sense, that these realities and are kind of interesting. It's really hard, and it's I would say it's kind of every city is new, and sometimes that's not always great, but in a way, I appreciate it. So the same way I appreciate that kind of differences, I think you can still say on the human scale too. So that was what I heard, kind of between the lines, what Neha just explained.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating in the work that we're doing with CivCheck is, yes, we're a technology vendor for municipalities, but beyond that, a lot of the discovery work that we do is very process and people oriented inherently, because you don't want technology, especially AI, to be a band-aid solution to bad fixes in the past. So a lot of what we do with municipalities, we work with a lot of kind of large municipalities across the US. Currently, we're doing some consulting work with Seattle. We've worked with New York City. To Yasushi's point, it's not a one size fits all. They kind of run the gamut when it comes to discretionary performance-based standards and regulations, where there is a lot more touch points with the customer when it comes to decision making, versus something that is more rigid in terms of structure and process and application of codes, where it may be more predictable, but there's less room for maybe the creative aspects to kind of push the boundaries when it comes to design. So the US is very interesting because the majority of municipalities use some version of model codes, but in reality, the way that you actually design and build in each city is very different. And it's because there's so much policy and underlying kind of requirements that push it. So some people or some municipalities might be very oriented towards the economic development of certain corridors. Others may be looking at affordable housing or rebuilding after a wildfire. So priorities are constantly shifting with politics, and how that manifests in a place like building permitting, which really plays a crucial part in neighborhood and context and kind of urban development. The intersection of all of those things are so interesting. And right now, policy writing tends to be pretty reactionary, where we are in a place where, with the right ingestion of policies and codes and standards, it can really start to become predictive in the future, where it can align with kind of the needs and wants of the local kind of the local neighborhood and the kind of trajectory in which you want to take policies, and how it kind of manifests in the built environment. So I think it's a really fascinating time where right now policies are written and laws are written after certain things happen. And now we can start looking more into the future, where we can not only layer these as like a database and its rich context that we can use in the current state, but also we can shape it in the future.
Yeah, I think that's like the interesting point at the end. Like when I look at like how have you encountered any unexpected challenges? Having kind of worked in this space of like working with these kind of learning-based models for over a decade now. The kind of running joke in our office is always that there's a lot of manual labor and automation. But what I think is happening now is that we're starting to hit this inflection point, and certainly we're seeing it within our own work, where the difficulty and the cost of developing a platform that can be, validated and verified is starting to come down to the point, and the methods for steering a model through like towards alignment or evolving the model even through system prompting without the necessity for retraining, I think is getting us close to a point now where the idea of an AI plan check is getting a lot more traction. And I think the thing that's driving it, I mean, as is always, the groups that are going to be driving this kind of transformation are going to be the developers, and it's about it creating, like, hitting that kind of crux or inflection point where the costs of developing and changing over to this system are low enough that the efficiencies it pays off in the production, in the process of getting a project built, kind of flips over. Whereas like it's probably still a bit prohibitive, although I know there's a few groups working on it here in Los Angeles that are beginning to advocate for this and kind of test out models for it. We're at a moment now where where these models are, I don't want to say like easy enough to work with, but like starting to become, accessible enough for producing results that are validated and able to be continuously evolved and aligned without like a significant investment of time and money, that we're going to be seeing AI plan check. And then on the flip side of that, as there's a few startups looking at kind of AI BIM replacement now. Autodesk has some in-house, but I could think of 4 or 5 startups at the moment that are also pursuing that we're going to be close to kind of agent to agent handover of the construction document sets or the plan check sets to the AI plan checker. And I kind of think that's going to be driven first at the larger cities where large enough developers have enough of a cost incentive or an economic incentive to lobby for that transformation to happen. And probably then, like in the same way that IBC was kind of the product of trying to create like a more standardized code, even though each municipality has their own variations on that, I think a similar effort will take place to kind of standardize that across the nation. But what's interesting is because of those abilities to rapidly modify through like kind of even just through system prompting, although also in terms of the, each city could have its own repository with addendums, the kind of technical hurdle to making something which could be an evolving, living code that's driven by AI is, I think, a more realistic possibility than it was even 2-3 years ago.
Oh, okay. So that was that's a lot. Trying to respond to kind of transition to the next thing. I guess we kind of talked about I mean, we've definitely touched on this, right? And replacing like some people being like concerned about being replaced. And then Casey, you were mentioning sort of like AI model talking to another AI model. I guess I'll just keep it very loose. So AI supporting human decision making, or okay, maybe touching on that helping human decision part. I guess Neha, you talked about how your tool on one end is sort of like educating the people who are applying, submitting application for permit, and sort of like using it as an educational tool for them to sort of like navigate through the process. I think Yasushi, you mentioned sort of like public engagement, sort of like getting their opinion on what they prefer in terms of what kind of zoning, more density or less density, et cetera. So I guess there's like different kind of inputs. Like I think a lot of different members in different committee members having different inputs. Right. And I guess the challenge with that sort of like outreach kind of work isn't necessarily there is always the answer. Like everybody says whatever they want. And I guess how would you navigate through that input and coming up with the decision to propose is ultimately a subjective decision, right? Because there can't be any objective truth that summarizes everyone's opinion. I mean, this sounds like a politics. So I guess in that inherently sort of like potentially irrational and potentially subjective human decision making, how are these tools useful or supporting that decision? I guess I'm kind of trying to talk loose enough so that it applies both in terms of community opinion gathering aspect, and then maybe something about the building permit, and then something else. But if anyone has, maybe I'll start with Yasushi-san because
Yeah, so my planning teacher said that if you're studying urban planning in the States, it's political, and everywhere else is engineering. So I think that's basically, I think it's the more I see different cities, and yeah, obviously places like San Francisco, even Boston too, it's very political, and I don't think we should shy off. Neha just said that is these requirements and these goals are shifting. That's like a sign that the political will is, and I'm not talking about like these red or blue situations. But you have so much dimensions, and I think yeah, so AI will come in to either support or dominate decision making, but we haven't really solved the human decision making part either. So, yeah, so actually, one of the um, my claims in my PhD thesis was, well, in these engagement meetings, we try to either vote or discuss on a very concrete level, which is upzoning or not. But I guess in a way, more rich decision making, like in a family, what to eat, there's a lot of, first of all, lots of delegations going on. Like a kid might delegate, or like a kid might partially delegate to dad, and dad might partially delegate to mom. But mom delegates to actually what's in the refrigerator, but then the kid says a completely different dimension, kind of like a cuisine level, and it's not even a dish. So that kind of organic decision making, we haven't really seen that in kind of public realms like community engagement. So I can talk a long while about the kind of this voting mechanism, but starting from that, like how can we incrementally delegate to AI if AI is actually supporting us? That's like a kind of a question to me. I keep referring to Neha, but it's this topic is also, I don't think it's black and white. Some parts you should totally let the AI read the code, but some parts we don't know. So that's the unknown part. But things seem to be oversimplified. Like if we have an AI coding tool, so we just call it a day, we kind of like trust that 100%. Um, that's a little bit weird to me. I'm not like rejecting either side, meaning that we should use these AI, um, and these are capable tools, but on the same time, it's unclear that what should we actually kind of hang on to. So I will more or less propose on a system that kind of you can partially or incrementally, not like 0 or 1, kind of delegate or trust these machine. And maybe there might be some times that we actually appreciate the hallucination. Because sometimes if I read these charters, sometimes there's like a complete output of a hallucination or something like that. That's very human in my perspective. But yeah, anyway, so I don't see. I mean, humans would do whatever, even AI takes or dominates. But the question for me is like, what's the smoothest path to this phase shift? More than like avoiding this abrupt change.
I guess I'm muted too. Any response, anyone? Or I guess this kind of reminds me of the previous thing. I guess, yeah, Neha and Yasushi, I think both of you mentioned where these codes, set of codes or chapters in these different documents or rules, like you find, because it's written by humans to start with, and then probably nobody who wrote any of these things have read everything else. So you constantly find these like articles or items that are contradictory to each other, which is actually kind of fascinating because like I guess sort of like the classic computer like thinking wouldn't allow that, but human legal world is filled with those, and then oftentimes it comes down to a subjective, whoever happens to be the decision maker at that time would go like, yeah, maybe this one, right? So like, do you come across that in your work, and do you have any opinion on that, whether it's advantage, disadvantage? Yeah, like, I guess any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we definitely have a very strong stance at CivCheck. I think, again, AI was a pretty novel concept for me a couple of years ago, but I really deeply understand what we do as an industry and how we kind of go about things. When it comes to the topic of kind of AI replacing human roles or not, there is so much context that is needed in order to make decisions in this space. So I think, Yasushi, you mentioned there may be two code books that have contradictions, and you have to have a final determination based on kind of what you're proposing on which one takes precedence. There's other things where when you're building on a greenfield site, the application of AI becomes a lot easier because there's no historical context to take into play. As soon as you start talking about existing buildings that were built decades and decades ago under different codes, there is so much layering that we need to do as both designers as well as city reviewers. You need to take into consideration was what was kind of designed at the time of initial approval, does that meet the context of what was allowable at that time? Is what is being proposed meeting the health, safety, and welfare requirements that are needed within the code, as well as kind of less concrete requirements too. So when you talk about occupational health and when you're kind of actually occupying these spaces, there are minimum standards that are set in place to just make sure that the critical life is being saved in the event of an emergency. But then you have all of these layered concepts around energy efficiency and all of these things that are always shifting in our space. How do you layer everything in a building that was built in the 1950s or the 1960s? And you want to now start applying very new material technologies into a space that maybe wasn't equipped to do so at the initial time of construction. So all of this information, it's very layered, it's very complex. So what AI is really strong at is surfacing what all of those contradictions, what all of those nuances and thresholds are. But ultimately, if we don't have a human in the loop at every stage, kind of augmenting the intelligence that the AI is bringing out, then there is room for such gaps. And because everything is so critical to life safety, we just can't afford to make a mistake. So it's really to build kind of the confidence in order to make decisions in this space rather than making the decision for us. And that's something that we're very mindful of as we're designing in a space that is so core to life safety. We want to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language and can go back and forth, but we're never leaving it up to the system itself to make that final decision. So I think that is something that is very unique to our profession, is making sure that health, safety, and welfare is kind of at the pinnacle. And we can't over-rely on technology to solve those problems. I think the other thing is we've kind of talked about repositories where we hold the intelligence of a municipality or the urban context. But those rules are always changing. So how do we drive accuracy levels to be high enough where we can make decisions without relying on something that can hallucinate? So I think that's where technology and automation can layer AI, but you might also want to bring in knowledge expert systems, things that are very kind of hyper specifically built to change something that humans understand to something a computer can translate. And then you can layer these kind of new age LLMs to make it easier for us to understand. But at the crux of it, if something is so rule-based, there's a lot of context, a lot of layering, there may be other types of technologies that you need to layer in to make sure that you drive accuracy.
I guess maybe a potential next topic is the code writing part. I guess, the old building code is also, a lot of people kind of sit in the code council and it gets constantly updated. But anyways, it seems like it's 5 minutes left. If anyone has final comments or reactions.
Yeah, I just I think on that last comment, I agree that one of the we get a lot of little witticisms and stuff from that I can't attribute, which is really good for an academic panel, right? But one of those things is that the thing that has value moving forward, or the individuals or professionals that have value moving forward are the people that make decisions and not choices. In the sense that, there's someone who needs to embed these ethical alignments, these ethical constraints, and this hierarchy of importance into the way that these code platforms are designed, into the way that the design platforms are designed. So in the same way that we've been building up the subjective value system that I have about architectural design into our automated platform, that has to happen at the governance level. And I think certainly that we're going to, will AI replace humans? Yeah, there's going to be a massive shift here that will only be stemmed if there is public regulation or intervention. So, in California, we have the Institute for California AI Policy that is starting to realize that, which is a group of people, most of them coming originally from the tech space, but are starting to realize that without public intervention into regulating artificial intelligence, that we are going to be facing a massive upheaval in both the kind of capitalism, democracy, labor, the economics of the world. So I think those sorts of initiatives are absolutely going to be necessary, but we're also definitely going to be looking at a future in which, particularly in the white collar industries like architecture, there's going to be a significant reduction in the number of individuals that are actively participating in that job. I don't know if you saw the Anthropic graph that came out, but yeah, anything that we traditionally think of as a kind of white collar college job is looking pretty rough. It's not going to be zero. There's always going to be necessity for some humans to drive that decision making and designing these platforms and embedding them with their ethical system design, whatever that might be, whether we agree with it or not. But the kind of industries that are relying on intellectual labor are the ones that are going to get automated the fastest.
I'm actually kind of optimistic. To be honest, I also love to live in a terminal, and I kind of miss the times that I get to build my own logic and stuff. And then now you have three agents building stuff. But then if it's so easy to accomplish one skill with the help of these, that means in your career, younger people would kind of get three or four that maybe even digital design was one thing. You can be proud of one thing, but then now with this, everybody can build anything. So I hope that me also kind of pick up new skills along the way, and we have the individuals are kind of a mix and match, and then that kind of makes because of these tools, maybe job security fears if it's only one job, but if you have three or four, and that just gives us kind of diversity. I hope that the world trends in that direction, so that we have we can learn from each other. So yeah, I fully understand that everyone is kind of afraid, but in a way, we should still have like this kind of what optimism.
Cool. I guess we're actually officially on time. I don't know if the live stream got cut or not. Yeah, but we're prompted to wrap up the session. Oh, it's still okay. Well, that was an uplifting end. But yeah, anyway, super exciting discussion. I think, yeah, it was I definitely enjoyed it, and thank you so much for joining so late, Yasushi-san and Neha and Casey. I think it's it's later than here, of course. I think
It's a reasonable hour.
yeah, okay. But yeah, thank you so much. And hope to get in touch soon regarding other things. But yeah, I would really like to stay in touch. But the session was great, and thank you so much for your time. And have a good rest of few hours of the weekend, I guess. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
じゃあこれこのまま
ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。
すいません。